And it's a very good morning to a special edition of Sportsfan Radio with our very special guest today, Brett Phillips, the host of one of the best tennis shows going around, The First Serve. Good morning, Brett.
Gentlemen, great to be back on with you. Good to chat.
And the reason we've got you on today, Brett, is the US Open just finished. Look, let's face it. What was the biggest headline? 2 unseeded women in the final, or Medvedev rolling Djokovic to make sure he didn't win the Grand Slam?
I think it has to be Emma Raducanu winning as a qualifier at 18. I mean, I still sit here a week later and shake my head in disbelief. And she's done more media in the past week than she's probably done in her whole life. I mean, she was even speaking in Chinese and Mandarin, the one I caught this morning for as part of her background, of course. It's a fascinating story. I mean, women's tennis, good luck. I mean, it is the hardest question I get asked every year. Who's going to win? Because this year we've seen different finalists, different winners, different semi-finalists, different quarterfinalists. Like it's like tennis equalisation. Everyone's been given a go, and you've got to grab your moment, because who knows if that moment will come again. And here's Raducanu, who 3 weeks before Wimbledon wasn't even guaranteed a wild card. She's 338 in the world. She's playing an ITF and a WTA as a wild card. She actually hadn't played for about roughly 18 months, because she was completing the equivalent of year 12 over there, and her parents didn't want her travelling through the whole COVID pandemic. She'd shown a little bit of promise as a junior, so a little bit of money was thrown her way from the LTA. But then we got to know her with that great run at Wimbledon. But to think she was going to back it up at the next slam and win 10 matches and win the whole lot and make 8 times the amount of money she'd made previously, it is mind-blowing. I think it's great for women's tennis. I mean, the next decade, 15 years, we've got some talent. I mean, Leylah Fernandez, who made the final, I mean, she just, the New York crowd fell in love with her. You got a young girl called Clara Towson, who played Barty in the second round. She's coming from Denmark. There's lots of girls who are emerging who no doubt, gents, would have the belief that I can be on that stage, and maybe sooner than I think. So that's the story of the 2 weeks, I think.
And Brett, the ability, and I don't think people fully realise the qualifying tournament itself is probably just as hard as the competition in the main draw. So for her to win 3 matches, and again, did not drop a set from her first match at qualifying to the final, is phenomenal.
It is, yeah. You're right, Dave. I mean, qualies is tough. It's on the outside courts, open to the elements. You've got to dig in, because you've got so many hungry competitors who are desperate to get into the main draw of a slam. I mean, it's life-changing. You suddenly pocket, $100,000 for being in that first round. It just sets you up. So they're scrapping and fighting. And look, from all reports, she didn't necessarily set the world on fire in qualifying. She got through, but she just got better and better and better each match, grew in confidence. As we were projecting the draw, hoping Ash was going to go deep, she was going to be on that collision course with Raducanu, and we thought, well, surely she can't back it up from Wimbledon. Ash should be safely through. Anyway, didn't get past Rogers, so that didn't become a story. But yeah, no, it's never happened in history that a qualifier has gone on to win a major. I think it's brilliant. Whether we ever see it repeated, who knows?
Another thing with obviously the 2 finalists with their rankings meant that they played at seeded players from an early stage of the tournament, which then, as you said, for us with Ash Barty, would have been great to see Ash get through, because she wouldn't have played some of the seeds. But were you surprised with Ash's performance against Rogers?
Well, Dave, she's going to have these days. And the reason she's world number one is she is the most consistent across the year. Most match wins, most tournament wins. Unfortunately, she's just not going to execute and get it right every single tournament. I mean, she's been away a long time. She's been up. She'd beaten, she would have gone in, I've beaten Shelby 5 times previously, fairly comfortably. But Rogers is one of those that, she can get on a bit of a tear, but really it was on Ash's racket. And it started like a car crash, that match. I mean, she had 5 double faults in her opening 2 service games. She had about 15 unforced errors to 1 midway through the first set. And you thought, okay, this is not great. But she resets so well. And then she's 5-2 up in the third. And you're thinking, well, should just put the icing on the cake here. And to not serve it out twice and losing a breaker, and then the New Yorkers are up and about, and the crowd's back at the US Open, getting behind their girl Shelby to cause the upset, whatever that's worth, hard to measure, but she would have fed off that. Look, I think, Ash is human, and women's tennis is super competitive, and she is the scalp that everyone wants to take. So the good part is she's got a nice little buffer as the world number one. She's going to finish the year as world number one. She'll reset again, Indian Wells to come. We'd love to see, obviously, have the ultimate success in Australia. We're crying out for an Aussie to win the Australian Open. But she's not going to have it her way every single week. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of hungry players. And, unfortunately, she's not going to get on a tear like a Serena Williams of that era. No doubt the majors, and on the men's side now, are going to be shared around between a whole heap of players.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Serena Williams there, and we talked about her on the show last week, that she, and probably Venus as well, changed the way that women's tennis is played and seen. And you've seen the power game come in. But Ash offers something so different to what they do. She's got a brilliant serve. She's got great ground strokes, and can volley too. Like, she's a beautiful volleyer. If anyone's watched her play doubles, she's a terrific volleyer. So she offers a lot more and a lot more variation, which probably does give those ups and downs a little bit. But you're right, mate. We're crying out for someone to win the Australian Open, and we've had Sam Stosur, who just feels the pressure of competing at home, unfortunately for Sam. So hopefully Ash can sort of ride the wave, and hopefully by then we've got crowds back at the Australian Open, touch wood, of course, and Craig Tyler can produce a miracle. But we should mention about Sam, BP, is that she's won 2 Grand Slam doubles tournaments this year.
I'm wrapped for her, absolutely wrapped. And, Sam, I've probably been guilty at times, sometimes talking about her negatively because we haven't seen the best of her here in Australia. But her resume stacks up. And to win a second US Open, 16 years after she won it back in 2005 as a 21-year-old, and a few months later she became the world number one doubles player. So to do it at the back end of her career is fantastic. And we know that this year she didn't take off overseas until, I think, 2 weeks before Wimbledon. She played Birmingham, Eastbourne. She stayed at home. She's become a mum, which has made life a little bit more complicated, and she'd be dying to get home now. She's been on the road for 3 or 4 months. Now, how that affects her next year, I mean, her singles career, let's be honest, is done. Whether she's going to get any more wild cards, but she could effectively play 2 more years of great doubles. I mean, her and Zhang Shuai, great combination. They're in sync. They have a great time out there. It's pure doubles. The way they cross over, one at the back, one at the front, the synergy is there. Cincinnati US Open, won the 2019 Australian Open together. So wouldn't you love to see Sam have just one more last good chapter of her career, but on home soil here? And I think then we would absolutely, just pay tribute to her, because she's a lovely girl who we've probably got to know more in the last few years. She's come out of her shell a bit as a person, but her resume stacks up. Well done.
And of course, obviously won the US Open, beating Serena in that final. I don't think anyone has probably played or served as well that match against Serena. So, and of course, we do judge her harshly because she did win a Grand Slam, but she should have also won the French Open too. That was a missed opportunity against Schiavone. But I think for the US Open, BP, she won, I think combined the two of them, it was $600,000 paycheck. So that's a fairly good living. And especially the way she plays. Like, it's to serve, the volley, make a few returns and you're set. So,
and she's still physically strong, so strong, those shoulders. I mean, she's always had the great kick serve, as you mentioned. I mean, she still hits a good ball. So, I mean, she'll play, I suppose, as long as she wants to still be part of the travelling roadshow, so to speak. But now she can pick and choose now. She doesn't have to go and play a full year. As we said, becoming a mum is maybe going to limit that. Maybe she doesn't want to necessarily play a full year, but she's in a great spot.
And then obviously on the men's side of the US Open, we saw John Peers with his new partner, I was going to say the Pole. He's actually Slovakian, I think.
Yeah.
But they made it through to the semi-finals. Possibly a missed opportunity for them, but having just started their combination, I think it goes well for the next year.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating year for John, isn't it? I mean, he's been so used to having a regular doubles partner, whether it was Murray, Continen, Michael Venus there for a little period. And obviously this year he's played with so many different players, and then he and Polaschik got together and I think had a chat before Wimbledon or before Tokyo, and then said, okay, let's give it a crack leading into the US Open, and they've made the decision obviously to stay together for the remainder of the year, which is great. So two guys that obviously are experienced, have had successful partnerships, and then bring that together. So I watched quite a few of their matches, and certainly could have gone further, but Pizzi's had a great time. Tokyo with the mix with Ash and here, and his resume stacks up as well, John Peers. And when he went to specialise in doubles, it's been one of the best moves. And I'm just thinking, David, that because we pay so much attention to singles, and we've got a situation now where Luke Saville is at his highest doubles ranking of 26 in the world. He was languishing in singles.
Yep.
So now he's going, geez, I can carve out a terrific career in doubles here and make some great money. And then you've got a guy, this is well down the pecking order at the moment, a guy called Jeremy Beale, who's from Victoria, lefty, who everyone tells me could be an absolute star. 2 years ago, had injuries. He's been on the road for 3 or 4 months now, having outstanding success as a doubles player, and now doing a bit in singles. So it's the mindset, I suppose, for players to make that call in about their mid-20s, isn't it, to go, gee, if my singles is not really going to flourish, because how do I make $1 on the ITF tour? It's impossible. But if I can get into doubles, good draws, and make a living that way, then maybe that's the way I go. So they're all going to make that call.
Well, the ITF circuit, playing those challenges is so hard, is that they're all competing with hundreds and hundreds of different people from around the world, sharing accommodation, sleeping on floors, whatever it is. So the other one, obviously, your show does focus heavily on the Australian content, and another couple that are going pretty well at the moment is Purcell, who we first saw really come to prominence back at the Australian Open 2 years ago.
Yep.
His performance there, playing with Luke, they made their way through, I think it was to a semi-final at the Oz Open.
Made the final.
Made the finals, yes, that's right. Sorry, yes. And he obviously then also went to the Olympic Games as well. So young kid on the rise, and probably people haven't heard too much about him.
Yeah. No, he's got a lot of potential, and he's being a bit younger than Luke. Obviously, he wants to still focus on singles. He's got a great mentor in Nathan Healy. I'm a massive fan of, done a lot of work with Nathan. He's a different sort of coach. He's all about that mindfulness and above the shoulders, visualization, just different techniques he uses to get you into the right frame of mind to play elite sport. Him and Max have really gelled. Max is he's a little bit of a quirky sort of character, a bit left field. In fact, he sort of embraces social media with us on the first serve and picks us up if we say anything wrong. But no, he's all over it, Max. And his game, I mean, he's taken some good scalps this year, hasn't he? So he got inside the top 200 for the first time. Let's see where he goes. I mean, he's certainly got a good game, a good thinker. It's not just all that power. There's a fair bit of brains going into his tennis and a real game plan, and he's got himself super fit. So yeah, he's one that can certainly elevate him.
And obviously, the US Open for Australian singles wasn't a great tournament in the men's side of it all. We'll leave Kyrgios alone. But I think the one that we're asking questions about at the moment, and we know that he had the COVID scare after Wimbledon, is Alex Demina, and where he's at the moment with his career.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a bit because the rankings freeze in the last 18 months. I mean, a lot of players have benefited from that and haven't gone too far down. But once everything catches up and all the rankings get back to normal, he's probably going to slip a little bit unless he starts putting some performances together. So he'd be disappointed with his slam year. He's had, that little pocket at the start of the year where he won in Turkey, had a good little period leading into Wimbledon at Queen's and Eastbourne. and then got COVID. Said quarter in the first round at Wimbledon, which was a tough matchup. Taylor Fritz first round US Open's a tough matchup. He's done a mighty job, I think, to get inside the top 20. Considering the limitations, and we know what the positives are. We know that he competes as good as anyone, but until he can somehow beef up that serve a little bit and get some free points, and just in general play less taxing points, which is going to be hard for him, then I don't know how he's probably going to progress any higher. So it's just where he's going to sit. So he might just stay around 30 or 40 in the world for some time, which is a totally acceptable in the big world.
We're critical, mate, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, we've got so many players ranked. So if you're inside the top 50 in professional tennis, you're doing pretty well. But some players just can't go any higher because the ones above them, it's a bit like, you make the 8 and you can't climb into the top 4 or can't really press for the premiership. That's where he's sort of at. I mean, if he can make a quarterfinal, it's a great result. That's dependent on draw and matchups. I just wondered, we threw it around a couple of weeks ago on the first serve, I just wondered whether someone else maybe comes into the camp along with Adolfo, his coach, who's been with him from day dot. They obviously get on well. They've been successful. I mean, Leighton's had periods, but now Leighton's not really travelling and hasn't travelled for some time. So do they, like a lot of players now, bring in someone else as that coaching consultant or second coach, a name who's played on the tour just to complement him? I don't know. Maybe he needs to just add a couple of things, but we'll wait and see. He's got to be fit and healthy too and try and be durable. Yeah. It's a tough game.
And obviously out of the US Open as well, we saw Djokovic play for the Grand Slam, which hasn't been done for some time. And people have said that he choked. I think that's a harsh commentary around that, because that doesn't give enough credit to the way that Medvedev played, particularly the serve. He served off his nut.
Yeah. Well, it was ominous signs when he broke in the first game, and you thought, okay. Well, I mean, look, Djokovic has been a bit of a slow starter in this tournament. He's dropped a few first sets. Not the end of the world for Novak. Whether there was a little bit of fatigue, maybe the pressure, I mean, it's hard to totally quantify, but I agree. I think Medvedev played the perfect match. And we said all through the tournament, one of these had to. Berrettini, Zverev, Medvedev. Well, someone had to play the perfect match if you're going to knock him off. So the good part about Medvedev is his IQ is off the charts. He's got a great coach. He's got a great relationship. He was always destined to win a slam. I suppose we were jockeying who was going to be first. He, Zverev, Tsitsipas. But Medvedev on a hard court got an unbelievable record. Served great. It's almost like Djokovic was looking in the mirror. I mean, he plays that similar style, just dog it off the baseline. And he's got the wheels too. You can think, oh, geez, he's so far back, I can probably throw in the drop shot after drop shot. But he anticipates like a big gazelle, gets the big 6'6" legs going, and he'll run down every ball. So he's destined for more success. And, it's good. I mean, Djokovic is now heading into the period, Dave, where he's probably got 2 more years at his real physical best. And the next group are hungry to step up. This is their time. So that clash of generations I love, and we'll wait and see. And there's the uncertainty of whether Rafa's going to come back, in what state he's going to come back. And I don't know, I've got grave danger of whether Federer's even going to play again. And really, he's not going to be a major factor at this point. So
the way that Medvedev moves reminds me a bit of Miroslav Michia, the way that he takes long strides.
Yeah.
You watched the other day, and his defensive, he actually upset Djokovic the way he was able to get everything back and then latch on to when something was short or the like. And the depth of play that he had, I think he would have beaten anyone on his day that day. And he did have a little moment in the third set where he sort of didn't quite serve it out, but I think everyone watching it sort of thought that no, this is going to be his tournament, and I think it's great for men's tennis. The way the tournament played out, very different to the other side, the women's, with the top seeds progressing through.
Yeah.
But you're right, Djokovic dropped sets or the first set on a few occasions, and I said to the show the other week, I could see him dropping the first set again here, but winning in, say, 4 sets. Once he gets into the match, once he gets his teeth into it. But he just didn't get a chance this time.
No, Medvedev's ruthless. He didn't let him in. I mean, even when he broke the first game of the second, status quo. This is going to go to script like it has all the way through when Djokovic drops the first, and then Medvedev wouldn't have a bar of it. So, yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And look, it's Tsitsipas, it's Zverev, Berrettini, and then, Shapovalov's going to come, Felix Auger-Aliassime making a semi, Carlos Alcaraz, who's going to be a star, obviously pulled out injured, but, he's 18, he's already inside the top 40. We got to see Holger Rune, who played Djokovic in that second round match. Holger's the next best 18-year-old who's closing in on the top 100. There's a lot of good players coming. So I think tennis is in a really good spot for the next 10 to 15 years, even though we're going to lose these once-in-a-generation, possibly absolute icons of the sport. Beyond that, the future's pretty good, I think.
And don't they set the bar for what's coming forward? So that group, so the Federers and Nadals, I'll throw Hewitt in there as well. They've set the bar now for the next generation coming through about what it takes and about the standard that you're going to have to play. Because you look at the period with Nadal and when they're winning all the Grand Slams, the players like a Thomas Berdych, and you go through the list of players that never won a slam, like your David Ferrers, and that were in the top 10, but never look like winning a Grand Slam. So, yeah, I think there's more depth now coming through, as you said, with the chance that more than one person will win a Grand Slam. So whether it is Zverev, we want to talk about Tsitsipas. I know Mark wants to talk about Tsitsipas and his toiletry issues. But I think it's an exciting time in the sport, both men and women tennis. We're coming into a really good period, I think, Brett.
Agree. Absolutely.
Gentlemen, before we talk about the toilet issues, we can't go past Dylan Alcott's win in the men's side of the tournament, giving him the Golden Slam. Just unstoppable.
Yeah, he's a star. Absolute star. He plays exceptionally well, and he celebrates probably better than anyone, Dylan. And the great footage of him being wheeled into Arthur Ashe. He played at Louis Armstrong next door, trophy presentation. Let's get you into Ashe. He's up there on the big screen, can of the local product, into the trophy it goes, 23,000 New Yorkers on their feet, and he just played it up beautifully, Dylan. Look, he's put a lot of hard work into what he's done. I remember seeing him train in Brisbane one year, and I was up there doing a Sunday afternoon 6-hour radio show in the booth looking over Pat Rafter Arena, and I'm watching Dylan out there and I'm thinking, God, you've been out there a long time. It was nearly 2 hours in the humidity of Brisbane training, and the upper body strength. His skill is phenomenal. So, yeah, hats off to him. I mean, it's a perfect way to go out. Certainly, we think the Paralympics, he's pretty much closed the door on that. Whether we see him next year, maybe he might play the Australian summer and that'll be it. I don't know. I mean, a bit to work out for Dylan Alcott, but he's got a pretty good future in front of him. He's got lots of strings to his bow, and he's going to be on our TV sets. He's going to be doing public speaking. He's got his foundation. He's got so many great causes he's involved in. So, yeah, he's certainly put wheelchair tennis on the map.
Sorry, go Mark.
No, I was going to change topics. So
yeah, he certainly, to win a Golden Slam is phenomenal. He's got a young kid that's rising up through the ranks that he looks up to Dylan as like his hero, mentor. You saw what it meant to them after the Olympics, the young Dutch kid, and obviously then Dylan played him again at the US Open. But yeah, Dylan Alcott, what's he got left to achieve? As you said, he's won the Golden Slam, he's won Grand Slams, he's won the Gold, but he's also become one of the most recognisable athletes within Australia.
Yeah,
athletes.
No doubt. So no, look, it's I've run out of superlatives, to be honest. He's and look, I've always had good dealings with Dylan. He'll always give you a little bit of time from a media perspective, and credit to him. He's done a mighty job across two different sports, as a young basketballer to a professional tennis player. So yeah, it's a great story.
All right, let's look at the vexed question of medical timeouts and bathroom breaks. It came to light at the US Open with Tsitsipas taking an 8-minute bathroom break after losing the third set in the first round to Andy Murray. Firstly, BP, I didn't realise that there was no time limit on a bathroom break.
No. I think it's something along the lines of, Mark, what is reasonable time? Now, reasonable time for all of us certainly differs if we're going off court. Now, I suppose the trend with this is the players taking these long extended breaks after they've dropped a set to, get themselves back on track, to halt any momentum the other way. So, look, we've discussed this quite a bit the last 3 weeks. The simple thing is for the tours here, and the players now are crying out for it. So I think the players will really get into the tours. Let's just make up some sort of, is it 5 minutes? Okay, if it's 5 minutes, these are the non-medical timeouts. This is if you want to duck off court, toilet, New York, they're playing in the humidity. Okay, if you need a quick change of clothes so you're comfortable for the fourth set, that's okay. The toilet's just off the side of the court. It's about 20 metres away. So 5 minutes is adequate. And if you're not back within 5, then there's some sort of penalty. And every 30 seconds after, maybe you get a point deduction. I don't know, whatever they come up with. And the players will adapt to that, like they've adapted to a serve clock. So they know when the umpire calls the score, there's the 25-second serve clock and it counts down and you've got to be serving at 0. They've adapted to no ball boys bringing them towels. They've got to go to the back of the court, factor that into the 25 seconds. Towel off, bang, get the balls, let's go again, watching the clock, I'm ready to go. So they'll adapt because otherwise players, so technically Tsitsipas wasn't breaking any rules or anyone else for that matter because there is no time on it. And players differ. So it's quite simple, but you wonder why the tours haven't done anything about it at this stage because it's been something that's been talked about for quite some time.
Of course, Brett, we as Australians, we had a player take a medical time or go to the bathroom with some rackets and come back with no rackets one time. He decided that he'd break some rackets in the break, so he should have just been defaulted, but they couldn't do it. So, but it is gamesmanship. You're right. Like they've changed rules at tennis for the sake of the sport rather than AFL or the like that just change rules for like the sake of it at the end of the day. So you're right with the ball boys, with the towels, with the service clock, with having to adjust to 5 set tiebreakers in the 5th set. All these rules have been done for the betterment of the sport. So medical timeout, we understand what that is, but where you have to have a bathroom break, there has to be rules on that.
It's certainly 8 to 10 minutes seems excessive. Now, players, I'm saying it from the comfortable seat. So the elite athlete will say, well, hang on, you don't know what it's like to play a 5-set match, and I'm being put through the ringer here, so I need an 8 to 10 minute breather. So anyway, I think the players know they should sit down. The ATP, WTA have a player council, sit down with the tours. Right, what is acceptable as elite athletes in the conditions that we play in around the world, and just to agree on that and bed something down, because otherwise it'll just keep flaring up as an issue.
And I think it's been done to death a little bit too. The medical sort of the timeout, I shouldn't use the medical timeout because that's different, and that is there are rules in place for that. So I'm surprised there isn't rules in place for the bathroom timeouts. And it's not like they have to walk through the stands and walk to and queue up in the Rod Laver Arena with all the other people.
And the only issue is if you play on an outside court and the toilet mightn't be as close, well then the time starts from when you would be escorted over by an official, and the time would start from when you go in the toilet, not going from court 19 at the back, the closest. So I mean, it's all relative, and I think it's quite simple, but we'll wait to see.
All right, Brett, we might get you out of here on this one. We did ask you last year about the Oz Open. We're 4 months out.
Yeah.
What does it look like in your opinion?
So I suppose the stark difference marked for next year is that the players won't be asked to be in a 14-day quarantine with very few opportunities to have movement, if you like. I mean, last year it was 14 days, 5 hours out a day, practice, exercise, eat. So the players won't cop that. So that's the negotiation going back and forth. The decision hasn't been made on so there'll be 2 weeks leading. I'm absolutely 100% certain the Australian Open will go back to its normal date, which will be mid-January. 2 weeks leading from the start of January. What the players and the tours want is that 2 weeks where they'll be in some sort of biosecurity bubble, but they can still train and compete and have the restrictions, but still be able to do all that, which is a big difference to last year. So the unknown, if they can't get tournaments into Brisbane and Sydney and Perth because of the border issues, which, I mean, looking forward, I think the easiest thing will be to do once again is have everything in Melbourne. Now, I got told a few weeks ago that they're probably going to scrap the ATP Cup for this year and just have 2 weeks of leadings, maybe have 2 ATP events, 2 WTA events, something like that. So there's a fair chance it might all stay in Melbourne again, but it'll get back to occupying that month of January. So I think the government and Tennis Australia are pretty close to sign off on that. They'll present that to the tours to get, yes, okay, happy with that. So the other thing is too, is that the players who are fully vaccinated will get more movement than those who aren't fully vaccinated. And that's sort of going along the lines of what the government's saying to everyone in Victoria anyway. If we get to that 70, 80% vaccination rate by November. So the same will apply. Now, there's a few in the tennis world who have clearly stated they are anti-vaccinations, so we know who they are. So they've got to make the call on that if they're going to get into Australia and also be able to have the movement that they want. So my understanding is probably about 50% of the players on the men's side and the women's side have been vaccinated, but there are plenty that haven't. And the hardest thing for them is they've been travelling all year and they're all these different parts of the world. They have one jab in one part of the world. How do we get it? There's a few complications there. Yeah, but I think the next few weeks we'll certainly find out. Everyone needs some clarity. It can't be going down to the wire like it did last year.
Will there be crowds or not?
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be crowds. I can't say definitively how many, but look, I think the Australian Open did an extraordinary job to get this year happening, and obviously we had the 5 days in the middle when no crowds were allowed in. Hats off to Craig Tiley. He's one of the great negotiators, shrewd negotiator with government and a powerful voice within the tennis ecosystem with all the seven governing bodies that look after this game and all try and somehow get on the same page, which is pretty hard. So, yeah, I think by that stage we can feel pretty confident that we're going to have crowds at the Australian Open. But they may be required to be doubly vaccinated. So we saw at the US Open, you had to show proof to get through the gates at Flushing Meadows. You had to have proof of one vaccination, and I think you had a quick test before you came in the gates. So it could be even a step up further than that at the Australian Open.
I'll just ask, Craig Tiley is the CEO of Tennis Australia, but he's also the tournament director. How does that work, Brett?
Well, yes. I mean, look, it's a point of conjecture, David, and I talk to a lot of people outside of the governing body, and I've in fact been having a couple of conversations this week, as Siri said.
Yeah. Was triggering that?
Yeah, it's always been a point of conjecture. Look, I'll put it this way: the international tennis community just rave about Craig Tiley as a sports administrator. What he's done with the Australian Open, but there's the Australian tennis community whose passion above anything else is their local tennis club. And we've all been involved in local footy, so we get this. It's their local tennis association. Yes, I go to a couple of days at the Australian Open. I like Ash, But my passion is Murrumbina Tennis Club or whatever tennis club it is. So there's a very different view from that side about how grassroots tennis is running. And the common thing that comes back to me, we've got a CEO who's actually the tournament director, and if you broke down the percentage of how much time he's dedicated to the Australian Open, and I don't know this for certain because I don't work inside the four walls of Tennis Australia, but that is a huge job in itself, with a huge team behind him who are doing a lot of the legwork, clearly. But right now, we're not getting it right as a player pathway, player development. So Emma Raducanu steps up this week. Now, the LTA over there haven't had a lot of players coming through, but now all of a sudden they've got these young sort of 18 to 20-year-olds who are emerging into the top 200 on both sides. The reality is we're lagging behind. And we've had another performance review, which is now being implemented. Tough for our Aussie kids to travel this year, a lot of them, due to the circumstances. So it's a job where you're not going to win everyone over. But I think, in summary, people probably feel like the focus is too much on the Australian Open and not enough on really harnessing Australian tennis. So, yeah, there's a lot more I probably could say, Dave. I mean, there's and you guys, you know very well about governance and boards, and there's a lot of talk about the Tennis Australia board and how it's run and who's actually running the ship and who's got the power. And if you ask the states, even the states are all operate differently. Tennis Victoria compared to Tennis Queensland, they've all got their little internal politics and structure, and Tennis Australia's got a fair say on everything. And there's a lot of people around Australia that don't want Tennis Australia to have the say on everything. Yes, you are the governing body and your job is to facilitate the growth of tennis in this country, but it doesn't mean that you have to put your imprimatur and have total centralisation and own everything. So, I could go on for hours. I'm trying to condense this as much as possible, but yeah, it's a huge topic.
And I think what you've summed up there is the feeling is that Craig does an outstanding job with the Australian Open. We're outstanding. And the fact that Australia still has a Grand Slam and that Melbourne still has a Grand Slam is a great credit to him and the state governments as well, that we've got this amazing facility. And we should get excited about the new facilities that are coming. So the sunken court and all the facilities that they're doing. But on the other side is that you saw we make a significant loss last year at the Australian Open that the Tennis Australia has funded. And you're sort of thinking, well, could that money be better spent in developing Australian tennis and developing the states and creating pathways, but also increasing the participation from juniors to seniors and keeping people playing tennis for a lot longer than what they are currently at the moment. So, again, you're right, we could talk about it for hours, but no, it's just an interesting one because it's sort of, there is that perceived sort of conflict there that I'm sure it's not deliberate, but the perception is reality at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen with any of the other Grand Slam nations. Conflicts in sport, we know they're there. We know they're there in AFL footy, tennis. Yeah, so there's a bit bubbling away behind the scenes.
But
all right, thanks very much for your participation today, Brett. The first serve, Monday nights?
Monday night, yes, we're on. Now we've done the US Open, we can sort of take a breath and just get into lots of different things over the next 11 weeks, Mark, until the end of November, and then we'll have a little wrap for December and come back in January. So 8 o'clock, Monday nights on SEN. You can listen anywhere around the country. If you're in Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, you can listen on the app. The app's the best way. Download the SEN app. You can carry the first serve and SEN in your pocket and listen anywhere, anytime. You can catch up if you miss us live as well. So, yeah, plenty to have a chat about.
Okay, thanks very much, and good morning to you all.
Pleasure.